All right, so it actually looks like we have a couple of people are trickling in, so we'll give it a couple more minutes. For those of you joining us right now, we'll be kicking this off in just a minute or two. So if you want to go ahead and add into the comment where you're logging in from, it'd be great to see where everyone is joining us from. Oh, we got Dover, Delaware. All right. Well, and I guess actually we can say because the three of us are logging in from vastly different places. So I'm Victoria with Bridgeline, and I'm logging in from Orange County, California. Jeremy, where are you calling in from here?
Well, I'm not terribly far from you. I'm north of you in San Luis Obispo, California.
I think Nils, you probably win the prize for farthest out from us. But where are you calling in from?
Yeah, I'm 9 hours ahead, I believe, from you guys. So I'm from calling in from Antwerp in Belgium now. So that's quite a bit away from you guys.
Bit of a jump, yeah. And I know a lot of the WooRankers joining us this morning are familiar with you, Nils, but we have Jeremy here with TruPresence. Again, California based. Oh, we got someone. We got Wayne from Toronto. So we got our Canadian friends joining us. Wonderful. Welcome, Wayne. And we'll just be kicking this off in just another minute here. So those of you who did just join, looks like we got a couple more trickling in. If you want to go ahead and add to the comments where you are joining from, it'd be great to see where everyone is. Right. Okay, got a couple more folks joining. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and kick this off. If you do want to add where you're joining from, I would love to see. We got Delaware, we got Toronto, and then California and Belgium are represented. Ooh, we got one from Israel. All right. Marvelous. Well, welcome. We have so many time zones represented on this webinar. Well, I'm going to go ahead and kick it off. So I'm just going to do a quick intro here, and then I'll hop on at the very end to let you know how you can best get this content at the end of the webinar. But I'm going to go ahead and kick off. We got the top 3 ways franchises can accelerate marketing ROI, and this is presented by Jeremy with TruPresence, and we have Nils with WooRank. So I'll go ahead and let you two do a quick intro and then hop right in.
Awesome. Thanks, Victoria. Hi, everybody. I'm really excited to be here. This has been a long time coming, and I'm thrilled to be here. So, Jeremy LaDuque with TruPresence. We develop digital marketing technology for franchises as well as any multi-unit organization. So anybody with multiple locations. So if we've got managers or regional managers or anybody here today with us who's responsible for digital presence that represents more than just one location, we're excited to have you.
All right, and I'm Nils. I co-founded WooRank many years ago. About a year ago, we got acquired by Bridgeline, but I'm still fulfilling the same role, mostly on the technical side of things as well as the product. So everything you see in WooRank and how you use WooRank today, one way or the other, is something we discussed internally, and that was I was involved in. So yeah, that's what I mean. Everybody knows WooRank, I guess. Otherwise, you wouldn't be joining this call. And quite recently, in the last couple of months, I've been working with the TruPresence team to bring a bunch of the data we acquired through WooRank into TruPresence and to kind of reshape it so it fits the use case of multi-location businesses a lot better. So, very excited to talk about franchises today. Jeremy?
Awesome. Thanks, Nils. So we're going to talk about 3 things here. I mean, ultimately, we're talking about, your marketing ROI. right? But we're going to talk about Google to start, right? And then we're going to roll into how to use a lot of that data to create actionable reporting. And then we're going to talk about something very specific that Nils and I have been working on this entire year. And when I said this is a long time coming, it's because we have been working very hard in creating a version of WooRank that can accommodate, like Nils said, the use case for a multi-location business. And we're going to get into that a bit, but we're gonna wrap up with what we call location analytics, which is something new that we've developed with WooRank. Specifically for franchises and multi-unit organizations. So let's jump in, Nils. I know there's always a lot going on with Google. And I know folks here today have probably heard you speak on Core Web Vitals, but there's probably still a lot to be said there. And it's always good to start there because that is just such a significant update by Google. Let's kick off with Core Web Vitals and why that's important to continue talking about and to make sure we're continuing to focus on those updates.
Yeah, sure. Indeed, people who've seen me in webinars before probably will think I am a broken record, but Core Web Vitals, it was a talk of town over a year ago, I think, or at least that's when Google made big waves with this update. But to this day, and probably many years in the future, it will still be one of the most relevant things you can do from a website's perspective, website performance perspective, user experience. Because we say it over and over. If you have a happy visitor, you'll have a happy Google. I mean, Google will pick that up. So if a website serves their visitors well, both on content level, which we'll get into also, as well as performance and experience of a website, you'll be golden. So I'll quickly give a recap of the Core Web Vitals for people who haven't watched the webinars or who aren't in the know just yet. If my screen, there we go. So on WooRank, but there's lots of other good resources, of course, on the internet. We have a Core Web Vital hub, so you will, in which we explain what Core Web Vitals are. So essentially, every time a visitor, so you as a user of the internet, visits a web page, a couple of metrics are tracked by your browser and by Google. So in total, there are seven web vitals, of which Google then picked 3 as the most important ones to kind of deterministically try to understand how well a user's experience of that website or a web page is. First one being largest contentful paint. Basically, what this is looking at, or this web vital is looking at, is when a web page loads, the biggest item you'll see on screen while the page is loading. So typically that's a big image, or maybe a video, or a big block of text. And they're going to look at, and I'm simplifying everything here. Again, there's lots of resources. You can spend hours on this to go into the nitty-gritty, but it's looking at the biggest element on the first load of a web page, and we'll see how long it takes for that to load. Typically, or at least hopefully, we're talking in the lower seconds, because every time it takes longer than 2.5 seconds is the cutoff point that Google sets. You're already in the danger zone, and if it's even larger than 4 seconds, you're not doing a good job at all. So it's very important for basically everybody building a website, or even maintaining or writing content for a website, to have a look at this metric, seeing if you load a big image on top of a blog post, for instance, make sure it's well optimized and that it loads fast, because if it doesn't, this is the one that will be picked up by Google, and if it's slow, you'll get maybe a strong word, a penalty, at least a hit on your core web vitals, and that's not a good place to be in. So very important. Again, it might sound technical, but we've seen over and over, this is the type of web vitals that everybody is responsible for, both a development team or people building a website, as well as a content, a marketing team who adds the content to the website, needs to be aware of if we load big things very obvious on top of a web page, are they well optimized? If not, probably just take it away and just have the text on top. That's better than having a very slow image at the top of a web page. So that's LCP, largest contentful paint. That's the first core web vital. Then a second one, cumulative layout shift. Again, very important for everyone involved in a website process, website building, website writing process to keep an eye on. This will measure how things move on a web page dynamically. So yeah, like we're 2022, web pages are not just static text anymore. We have a lot of things on our pages, on our websites, moving things, animating things. So the more things are moving on a web page and pushing text around by popping in at one point of time, this is going to contribute to this CLS, so this cumulative layout shift metric. So the key takeaway here, and again, oversimplifying, but be very aware that if you use certain elements on a web page, that can suddenly pop in. Think an ad, for instance, or a block of like an invite to a newsletter, something that suddenly pops in, pushes all of the rest of the web page down. This is going to contribute in a bad way to the CLS score. So people are reading something, so suddenly something pops in. That's not a good user experience. I think at the bottom of this page we have some examples of ads, for instance. Ads are a very typical one. So here, like suddenly an ad pops in, the entire website shifts down. That's not good. Ideally, the text remains in place, and you'll start off with a placeholder. So the top one is how not to do it. So at the very top, it jumps everything down. Whereas in the second, there's already kind of a place ready for that ad to load in, and the entire website isn't being shifted down. CLS, again, important for everybody to be aware of. The third one, and I'll gloss over that one because this one does get a little more technical and is generally more on the responsibility side of the web development, web maintenance team, is first input delay. This basically looks at, so when a web page loads, your content loads, there's some JavaScript, some CSS, like a lot of things are happening in the background. So there is a point in the timeline of a page that is loading. So from point 0 up until the entire page is loaded. At certain times in that timeline, scripts will start loading, things will happen, and there will be short time periods where it kind of locks the user interface. So you aren't able to click anything yet as a user because things are still loading. That's what first input delay is all about. So how long does it take for a browser to load a page up to a point where a user can start interacting with that page? So everything in between there, it kind of locks the UI, so that's not very user friendly. This is measured in milliseconds, so ideally this is a very small time period. But again, also important if you can think of websites where you go in and suddenly, like, you already tried to do things like click in an input box and nothing's happening. That's what this is about. Like if it takes a page long to make it interactive, that's not a good user experience. So that's first input delay. A little more technical, I would say, because this is more on JavaScript optimization and things like that. So yeah, but definitely also important to be aware of this metric and to track this metric and make sure it's
that's really good. That's a lot of very technical, right? I'm thinking, web developers, the development team who's building the site. So as the franchise marketers who are on the call, my takeaway from this is, this has to very much stay at the corporate level, right? So I've been in franchising a long time, started building websites for franchises in 2006, so quite a long time ago. And I've been on every side of the table when it comes to digital marketing. And a lot of times in the franchise world, or if you're in any situation of multi-location business where you have a corporate entity who's responsible for the national brand and delivering down that local presence, right? That means there's a local website as well. All of this seems like it should really stay with corporate. It's way too technical. And a lot of times when there's a location manager who understands that location and understands how to promote that business locally, you do allow that somebody at the local level the ability to update certain aspects of a website. But I'm hearing a great takeaway is make sure you're working with your web development company or your web devs internally to make sure that any access you give to somebody at that local level does not impact any of this. Literally put it on the table in the meetings, with web developers. Like, I need to make sure that any access we give to a franchisee or a location manager is not going to impact our core web vitals. Right? It's that everything you just described, it would be way too technical. We really just want the location managers and franchisees to focus on the content, the messaging, nothing like that. So any thoughts about, how do we keep core web vitals and negative impacts of it away from somebody at the local level who really should just be focused on content?
Well, it's maybe apart from the last vital, so that one with the JavaScript optimization, that's very technical and probably indeed at the corporate managed at the corporate level. But the other two are very much a shared responsibility. It's not just developers, it's not just content marketing. Everybody is part of the process, and it should be a shared a shared journey. I'll give a quick example of where I've seen it gone wrong. So was a website of a climbing gym. There's people working on that website as a developer. There's people writing content for youth, for their youth branch, for events. And the event team posted a big banner on the homepage for an event that weekend or a couple weekends down. Poorly optimized, the image, but obviously it was important. It was an important event. Put it on top of the homepage. That suddenly became the largest contentful paint item, was poorly optimized, and the entire website suffered. Because that's the first thing people see when they go into the web page. It loads poorly, so it's that's not a good thing. And you can say, it should be optimized, but that's the shared responsibility. Like, don't just put stuff on your web pages just like that and hope for the best. No, this is where we need to talk with each other, developers, marketing, and so on and so forth. And the same applies for multi-location businesses. Of course, it's probably a bit more of a barrier to talk up to corporate level, but at least even at the level where you can manage pages for your specific location, be aware that whatever you do and whatever you put on a page can have an impact on those web vitals. That's
agree.
what you need to be aware of.
Yeah, I have two thoughts for the marketers on the call. Is one, in your training, if location managers and franchisees are updating websites, you're going to have to boil down some of the language you heard here into just layman's terms, like, the largest image needs to be optimized. So, it sounds like there's a training component to this to make sure anybody contributing to the website is aware of this. And two, there is the ability a lot of technology out there. We do this, we can put controls on content that's being updated, right? We can have it pass through, through workflows and things like that. And it sounds like, some areas of a website that need to be updated locally might have to go through um, that kind of workflow to make sure we're not negatively impacting the site. So okay, so everybody remember Core Web Vitals, really important stuff. Nils, let's move on to, is there anything else going on with Google we should be aware of right now?
Yep, there's always something with Google. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing this for, what is it now, 12 years? Yeah, so once or twice a year, there's no strict schedule, but Google releases a core algorithm update, a core update. They have been more vocal about these and more transparent, actually, because it used to be like a black box where yeah, indeed, no, just always do whatever we tell you to do. But so that's a good thing. They've become more transparent. I think it's only a couple of years that they've been using the term SEO on some of their web pages and training materials. So they finally acknowledged that SEO is a thing a couple of years ago. But anyway, so core updates. Another one happened this May. So a month and a half ago. And generally, the more recent core updates, there's lots of very brilliant people following along what's going on at a very, like, almost a global level, what categories or what industries see most movements and things like that. And so one topic that's very hot when core updates happen, at least in the more recent years, is authority. So are you as a website owner in a certain industry, niche, whatever, do you have authority to talk about that topic? So I think the most typical or most obvious example of that is in the healthcare space. Like, if you talk about back pain, like, are you a person who is an authority, an expert who is trained to talk about back pain, how to solve back pain? So that's the kind of things that Google is after, and is constantly updating their algorithm to look for authority on articles.
On the author of the article?
Yeah, it starts with the author, of course. So there's lots of ways to define who the author is, obviously, through structured data. And then there's lots of ways for Google's AI to see, okay, who is this person? And obviously, you can help Google by providing information about an author, but then they'll have to check that, of course. Anyway, so don't want to dive into that rabbit hole, but yeah, is this person someone who has already written articles about that topic? Maybe even in case of healthcare, scientific articles, things like that. Are they referenced by other people? Like the old way of doing science and writing papers and getting references, being peer reviewed, stuff like that. Like, they keep applying the same principles to their algorithm since the beginning, since 25 years, but it's constantly updating. So one thing I'm gonna mention there, because again, we can spend probably one or an entire webinar on this, but is an acronym called Google, or EAT, E-A-T, which stands for expertise, authority, and trustworthiness. So that's also not new. The term has been around for a couple of years now. But every time core updates happen, this is an article on Search Engine Roundtable after the May update hit. Every time there's a core update and people start talking about my website lost a lot of visitors, or my website won a lot, like the recurring theme is, okay, authority is what you should work on. Without diving into too much details, Google themselves have an article, I think it's from 2019, on EAT, E-A-T, explaining that when you look at the content you produce on your website, how do you keep your content up to date? How do you remain an authority on the topic, and things like that? So there's entire blocks of text here, but that's one of the hot topics these days.
Well, there's always a double-edged sword in franchise marketing, right? Because you have local experts, right, in your organization, which is great, right? And either we can leverage that, or that could actually hurt us, like, right? So, we could have a situation where franchisees are in there updating websites, but they're not doing it in a proper way, and they're actually hurting the website. So what I'm hearing here is content is still king, but Google has actually upped the playing field, and the content actually has to come from somebody with authority and credibility on the topic itself, which is interesting to think about in the franchise space. I mean, that means we need to make the franchisees experts, which is a great opportunity. We could have hundreds or thousands of local experts producing content. That certainly complicates things, and that's definitely what Google's algorithms typically do, is just simply make something more complicated. But I get it, right? They're looking for quality content. How do you do that? You actually check up, on who wrote the content and see if they're actually credible. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
And this works in both ways, because at one point you need to be able to build authority. Like there's always chicken and egg problem there, but at the same time, it's also about going back in time and looking at all the pieces of content that have been published on your website or for your location or whatever, and updating those, or even removing those. If something is not relevant anymore, then there's no reason for it to be on the internet anymore, and people can find it and get the wrong information. So also cleaning out content, updating it, that's another important step that sometimes is forgotten. So people think about new content and how can I get Google to rank those and improve those, but at the same time, just throw articles that don't make sense anymore away, and that will also help your authority. So
yeah, no, that's interesting. So that's a good nugget. I mean, are you telling me you think that if you have old content that literally it's outdated, it's not relevant, you could be dinged by Google because of that content?
Yeah, definitely. Because they look at, okay, what have you written before about a certain topic, and at the same time, another thing they check is, like, is an article helping the end user? Is an article helping the visitor to that page? So if it's an old article with information, like in the SEO space, we do it constantly on WooRank. Right. Like we look at what we've written maybe a couple of years ago. It's like, it makes no sense at all anymore. Just remove the article or rewrite it if that's a possibility. Sure. But sometimes things really just are outdated and have no reason of existing anymore. So just throw them away, because otherwise they will get flagged as, well, this isn't correct. So authority.
No, it makes sense. We have been pounded on, content is king, right? So it just seems counterintuitive to remove content when we've been told for years, if not decades, that content is king. So that's interesting.
Yep.
All right. So, I want to talk about this next topic, because I mean, I myself, I'm working with franchises, and I'm talking to them right now about what are we doing about Google Analytics, because I know Google Analytics current version is going away, and Google Analytics 4 is coming out. So let's talk about that. Let's start with, give me a nutshell of what is Google Analytics today, and why is Google moving to GA4, and why is that better for us?
Yeah. So I'll mention two terms: universal analytics, which is the current, or the one that's going to be deprecated in July of next year. That's universal analytics, the one probably most people know and use every day, or just use. Google Analytics 4 announced a year, maybe 2 years ago, will be the new version and the only version from July 1st next year. So it's a bit of a, I would say, maybe scary to some people to move from one to the other, because there's no clear migration path, I would say. It's not like a one-to-one replacement. Like, yeah, this metric in the universal analytics in the old world is this metric in the GA4 world. That's not the case anymore. So universal analytics was very much focused around page views. So yeah, a visitor comes to a page, that counts as a page view. They acquire a bunch of other information about that page view, like time on that page, bounce rate, things like that. But it wasn't much about a user's journey per se. Like you had to build those things yourself. Like how does a user flow to my website? They come in on this page, and they do this and this and that. Like a user's journey is something you kind of needed to build on top of that. In Google Analytics 4, that's different. So Google Analytics 4 is a lot less on page views. So even searching, for instance, like you've created a new landing page, and how much page views has that landing page gotten? That query or that question is not so easy to solve anymore in GA4, and that's the scary part, I guess. Yeah, probably many marketing teams have certain ROIs that are about page views and getting hits on certain pages. And yeah, in the GA4 world, not that easy to. It's possible, but you need to jump through a lot of hoops to get that done. So GA4, we need to shift our mindset a little bit and think more about users' journeys. Because even to give an example, GA4 properties, so one that you can install on a website, you can install the same one in a mobile app, and the data will be shared. So if one of your users visits your website, then downloads your mobile app, and then starts doing things through your mobile app, GA4 will create kind of a homogeneous journey for that user within the metrics. It's also much more event-based. So universal analytics comes from a time where every click went to a new page, and then that's a new page view, etc., etc. Today, and it's already the case for a couple of years, we live on much more modern websites where you can click on a page, things happen, but it doesn't necessarily reload the page. Like we're actually running applications in a browser on one page. That's the new normal. Wasn't as easy to track in universal analytics. GA4 has that a lot more native baked in, so it's a lot easier to track those kind of journeys with GA4. So yeah, and then there's the dashboarding and the tools you get to visualize the data have also changed quite drastically. So again, these are all good things. This is definitely a change that at one point had to happen and is probably overdue. But if you're very baked into the universal analytics, Google Analytics console, you'll need to start working with GA4. So the best practice and the best advice I can give is, if you haven't already done so, install your Google Analytics 4 property, like the piece of JavaScript that you need to install on your website, in parallel with your other Google Analytics property, like the old one, Universal Analytics one, so it already starts acquiring data, and then slowly start working with GA4 and start trying to answer the questions you had before, and you answer with Universal Analytics in a new way of thinking. So because only by doing this, you already acquire data in GA4, so that by July 1st next year, you already have a year's worth of data that you can work on once you're forced by Google to move over to GA4.
Yeah.
So this is definitely not the last thing we'll say about this, because it is important, and we know we talk to our customers, obviously, and we know for some it's scary. Like we suddenly need to change our ways of working. So yeah, it's very important to act now and to start getting familiar with GA4 so that you're ready by the time Google flips the switch.
Okay, I know, and you know, we're all busy, so I saw that we're a year out from it, right? So of course, naturally, somebody could think to themselves, well, I've got a year. But I also heard if you don't put the JavaScript on your site right now, you will not be collecting data into GA4 for a
No,
year from now.
correct.
So, and will any of the will any of the current Google Analytics data be ported into GA4, or is GA4 brand new?
It's a completely new, let's call it database, I guess, on Google's end. So it's a new property. When you look in the the Google Analytics UI, and you literally switch from one to the other. There's no shared view or shared data or anything. So install both, or yeah, install GA4 definitely now. I think if you start a new website, it's not even possible anymore to install Universal Analytics
Can't even
for
create new
quite a
accounts.
while
Yeah,
now. But it
yeah,
doesn't hurt to have both running in parallel for now. So you can still make comparisons between the two. Like you still work with the same, I mean, the same visitors come to your website, right?
yeah, yeah.
So
So you're just tracking two Google
yep,
Analytics packages
yep,
now. But if you don't, but if I mean, if you don't get GA4 on your website immediately, I mean, you're not going to have literally as of right now this month, you won't have a year's worth of data to work
no,
in
correct,
GA4
correct. Yep, there's
when that's
no,
the only tool you are going to have.
yep, correct. There's no migration of data from one to the other.
Okay.
It's
All right.
just a
Well,
new
that's
clean
an
slate.
absolutely key takeaway then. I
Yep,
think we need to get on that right away. And like you said, I mean, I come to you all the time to talk about that with our customers and get that path going. This is also though a perfect segue to something else I want to talk about, right? Which is we're so dependent on Google Analytics, right? Just so dependent in console data, and one of the things I want to talk about, and I know you've talked about this, you talked about it at a conference a little while back in Brighton, and that is picking your own business intelligence software, right? Picking your own BI tool and pulling that data over. So let's talk about that. But my first question is, could you pull over some of your GA universal data today, and that way you do have some of that data historically in a BI tool, and that way when universal goes away in a year from now, you don't lose that data.
yep. So there's indeed a couple of ways to go about that. Both have APIs. So the old Universal Analytics has an API. GA4 has a different API, sometimes even confusing, even if you know what you're doing. But so that's a way to pull data out. You can use, and we'll obviously talk about that more in a second, but Google Data Studio to pull in data. There's ways to, yeah, if you keep it in Google's walls, there's a BigQuery, which is their sort of proprietary database that has very easy to set up connectors. Like you don't need to be technical at all to set those things up to pour in data, or yeah, suck in data from Universal Analytics, Google Analytics 4 in a database. So at least you have it kind of, I mean, Google is not going to throw the Universal Analytics data away. It's just that it lives in two different places. UA and GA4 are going to live in two different places. But then it's up to up to us to work with that data and to visualize it, because everything that's in a
Yeah.
huge table is not very actionable, not very readable. So then it's a matter of drawing your own dashboards with tools, custom tools like WooRank TruPresence, tools like Google Data Studio that is available and free for everybody.
Yeah. So somebody, let me take a pause and just circle back to BI tools. We've got a couple questions on that. So business intelligence tools is, I mean, think of the ability to take data. It could be from a spreadsheet. It could be just by literally going in and clicking a few buttons and pulling in Google Analytics data into this tool that allows you to start visualizing that data and building your own reports, right? And so Google Data Studio is an example of a BI tool. What's called Power BI Salesforce's Tableau. These are all really big, BI tools. And Nils, we were just talking about this not too long ago. You made a good point to me that, by going into another analytics tool like Google Analytics, you're looking at how Google wants to visualize the data, right? Selecting a BI tool and then bringing that data over. I mean, there's multiple benefits, but two right out of the gate is you can now start building your own reports, right? You can start building reports that are meaningful to you, not just relying on what's been handed to you. And the other thing is you can pull in, multiple layers of data. And we were forced, to do that, right? Because we rely on Google Analytics data. We rely on Google Console data, but we also rely on our own data, right? WooRank and, what we've been working on, and we're going to talk about here in a minute, is the fact that, we have innovated reporting down to the location level of a franchisee, which is really critical and something that we couldn't find anywhere else, and we literally built that. But to visualize it, not only can we visualize some of that data in our own software, but as we realize, well, we want to visualize our own SEO performance software, with Google Analytics, we had to bring all of this into a BI tool. So for us today, our customers, they log into our software, they log into GA, but they also log into a BI tool like Data Studio, so that we can bring all that data together to create a more, to create a larger view and a more insightful view. And that's really, on back to the agenda we started with, when we're talking about actionable data, that's really the crux of it, right? And the ability to bring in all the data you need and build the reports that you want. I mean, a perfect example, like I mentioned, I've been in the franchise space a long time. Perfect example is, if you have 100 locations and you've got some franchisees who are super happy with their local digital presence, and you've got some franchisees who are not, could you go in right now and show a report on each location and how the performance is? You can go into Google Analytics and do that, right? But that's artifact data, right? That's what happened, what occurred. You got this, like Nils mentioned, you got this many hits and sessions, and this is what they did. But why did that happen? And that's where we innovated WooRank, so that it could actually do reporting at the local level, so we could correlate. Okay, this is what happened. This website is clearly getting less traffic than this website, but here's why, right? Here's the SEO audit that literally shows that this website's audit reveals that it has a lower score than this location. So I love the fact that, we are not only innovating in our own tools, but we're bringing that data into BI tools, for a much more rich, view, and truly actionable. Because when you have a report that says to you, here are your bottom worst performing, it sounds terrible to say, but here's your worst performing franchisees in your network as it relates to their local website, and here's your top performers. The information in the action you can take from that, is significant, right? At the top level, you could create a best practices and say, here's why those websites are performing so well. Here's the 10 reasons why, right? Here are the 10 things you could do. And here are the reasons, here are the things not to do. Here are why these websites are not performing well. So that kind of actionable data is at the center of what we've been working on. And it's been really exciting to do that, through the course of this year. Yeah, go ahead.
And it's actually because again, I've been doing SEO and building tools for SEO for more than 10 years, and it's actually only very recently by talking to you and having a very focused view on franchises that I saw that there's actually still a big gap, because I often preach use Google Analytics, use Google Search Console. Those are the two most powerful tools when you're doing SEO. Like Google literally hands them over for free to you, which is weird to say, selling a tool that helps SEO people. But then you go into Search Console, and if a franchisee in Chicago wants to get some view on how well they're doing, that's not something you can do in Search Console, because the smallest granularity is at the United States level. Like it can filter out data, United States, and that's it. So indeed, that's how we started looking at our own data. So the data we can pull out of Google Analytics, data we pull from Search Console, as well as data we had on top coming from WooRank and a bunch of other sources. And that gives us the opportunity to drill down into the actual state, city, or even smaller granularity level, and build reports like this. So looking at across franchisees of a certain business or a certain franchise business across the United States, which are the ones that are doing well, which are the ones that are doing less well, I would say, or doing maybe even poorly, and how can we kind of bring that information to the franchise level and help them understand, okay, what are the ones that are doing well, doing that the others aren't doing, and how can they exchange that information on what they're doing good versus what the others are not doing good, and learn from each other, and kind of create a win-win. So showing on screen now a map view of things going on with franchisees within a franchise business. There's other ways of looking at. So that was very geolocal, but also just looking at industries. So if I have a business or a franchise in let's say bike stores, selling bikes, selling bike accessories, stuff like that, how well am I faring against my industry? Am I doing better? So at the industry level, are there certain things I'm doing well? Obviously that's good, so keep doing those, but maybe there's a few things that I'm not doing so well that my industry is better at, so I can have a look at my competitors, at the competitive landscape, and try to understand what they're doing better, and keep up with that.
Yeah. No, and I love this next report because we've got some questions of like, how do you combine data, right? And so the next report is literally just that, right? It is, if you look at this chart here, you've got on the left there, it says sessions, right? And so what this is this is a graph that is showing data from Google Analytics, the number of sessions. Each dot represents a franchisee in their specific location. And what we were trying to show this particular customer of ours was the correlation between the number of sessions the website gets and the score, that audit score that we talked about a minute ago. And what this shows is, yes, the higher the score that you have, the more traffic you're going to get, right? And in sometimes that's the graph you need to be able to show your franchisees is, I have a score of your local website and I need to work with you on that website. The beautiful thing about franchising, right, is the fact that, we have this national, audience, this national presence made up of, franchisees who are bought in, right? And the balance we're always trying to create is, we'd love to automate things at the national level, right? We'd love to be able to just make it a do it for me model where we do it all at the national level and we push it all down. But that's not the reality. There always has to be local, input and contribution. And so that's the balance we're always trying to create here. And this is the kind of reporting that you sometimes have to be able to produce to say, okay, so we've got some work to do, right? We've got some scores that are lower than others. Let's get them all up. Even though we push down websites to every single location, that was 2 years ago. Local competition has played a part, and local contribution to the website has played a part, and all these factors and everything we've talked about here, things are constantly changing. And here we are 2 years later, and we're now able to produce a report that shows exactly where each website is, not only according to the performance of the website itself, but the actual sessions and traffic that the site's actually getting. So this is literally a report that comes out of Google Data Studio, and it's pulling in data from WooRank, which is showing a performance score, and it's pulling data in from Google Analytics, showing the traffic and how those correlate. So this is an actionable report, because from here we could then break down and say, okay, what do we need to do to those sites that are on the left of this chart and not on the right? And those are the kind of reports that we produce and then execute on. So yeah, this is great. I know we're coming up on time, Nils, and I know there's one more topic I really wanted to get to, which is, we've been referring to this location analytics this whole time. We've been referring to, that graph depicts it perfectly, where, every location is on a map. But how did we actually get to that? So maybe you can introduce us to this new functionality we have in WooRank called location analytics.
Yep. So basically, like what we offer with WooRank hasn't changed at all. So that's the beauty of it. We pull in a lot of data, process the data, aggregate the data, and then come up with a score to sort of bring it all together and give a actionable and understandable way to measure how well a website is doing, right? So there's this one example, and you can pull this example for any type of business, but in this case 7-Eleven, where you'd say at the national level, so just the main website 7eleven.com is doing pretty well. 74 is a very good score. But then when you drill down into specific locations, the story changes, so that's what you're seeing here. So 7-Eleven, national level, good website, well optimized. But drilling down into very specific locations of 7-Eleven, the score drops. And this is, I guess, a message for internally for 7-Eleven to look at. Okay, what is our team at the national level doing well, and how can we kind of infuse that knowledge to our location businesses? So this makes that very obvious, very visual. So it shows that there's work to do at the location level to improve their localized websites or local parts of the website, get that score up, and by extension get the visitors to the websites or to the local websites up.
Yeah, and I think that's what we saw, right? When you and I met, years ago now, and I'm a franchise guy and you're an SEO guy, I said, how can we use WooRank for franchise? Your initial reaction was, no, Jeremy, you cannot treat /California, as a website. It's not a website. It's within a larger domain name. And I said, but that's franchising, right? That is a website, to that local owner. That's his local presence. And so here we are today, where we did it. We produced functionality inside of WooRank that can actually now treat each of those locations as a website, right? And now we're kind of being able to, pull back, layers and dig in and see that not every location performs, at first of all, like the primary domain does, and secondly, not every website performs, the same as others, right? So the ability to do peer reviewing, where we could say cluster up everybody in Austin, Texas versus everybody in New York City and see how they're doing. This has been really exciting new technology to work on, and this is the big reveal here. That we're actually showing this here that we have created this, and we're super excited about it. This is functionality in WooRank. But you can't go to WooRank right now and actually just sign up for an account. This is specialized technology. You'd have to reach out to us to discuss it. But it is technology in there, but it's not in the base accounts that you can get off the WooRank website today. So with that, I kind of want to move into wrap up mode. There were a lot of great nuggets all the way back to, get GA4 JavaScript on your website today, to make sure you understand core web vitals, to look at a BI tool and kind of expand your mind into not just thinking about logging into Google Analytics or some other software, but log into your own software where you build your own reporting. It's kind of interesting. It's synergistic to say that, right? Because you really made a great point about how you're going to have to make a paradigm shift in your mind as you move from GA Universal to GA4 anyway, because they're so dramatically different. That at that same time, what a perfect time to also introduce a BI tool into that scene as well. So a lot of value there. So I want to thank everybody for joining us. I hope you guys, I hope everybody here also took a lot away. I think a lot of folks here are already probably following WooRank, but it would be awesome if you want to know more about what we're doing in the franchise and multi-location space. You can actually go to LinkedIn and follow TruPresence on LinkedIn, and you'll get that information there as well. Thank you for posting that. So, but yeah, so this has been great, Nils. Thank you so much. Thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope everybody has a great day.
All right, thanks, you too. And again, just what Jeremy mentioned. So if you do want to hear about this as an ongoing webinar series, we did just post the link to the LinkedIn for TruPresence. And then that's also a great way to connect. As Jeremy mentioned, a lot of the functionality for WooRank that they're talking about in this webinar isn't just available when you sign up for WooRank. It's a little bit more specialized. So if you do want more information on that, I would definitely suggest connecting on LinkedIn is a great first start. So again, I'm going to go ahead and log out, but thank you too. This is a great conversation, and looking forward to what next month is for the TruPresence Talks webinar series.
Awesome.
All right. Bye,
Thanks.
you guys.
All right,
Thanks,
see you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.